In this super review, let's take a look at the Lenovo Yoga Book. If you've been following my channel, you might have noticed that I recently got a Microsoft Surface Go. And you might have noticed that I wasn't super happy with the performance. So what did I do? I went out and got a computer with even worse performance. I'm pretty sure this is gonna have worse performance. This is the Lenovo Yoga Book. It is a small, very small Windows laptop that I think is kind of in the same space as the Microsoft Surface Go. It is older, but it's also cheaper. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna unbox it and I'll play around with it for a little bit, spend a few days with the Yoga Book and see, is the performance trade-off something that I'm happy with versus the Surface Go? I know I'm exaggerating here, but this box is surprisingly heavy. For a small little tablet slash laptop, let's do a quick tour of the box, see if we can get any information about it. Here we've got the logo, which says Yoga Book. Productivity on the go. It's from Lenovo. This doesn't really tell us much about it. Here on the side, it tells us we have a 10.1 inch IPS screen and the resolution is 1920 by 1200, which is just slightly higher than HD resolution. Around here on the back, there's, again, not a lot of information really printed onto the box, but there is a sticker here that tells me everything we need to know. So this is a 4-core unit, which is actually more than the Surface Go. The Surface Go, as far as I know, is actually just a dual-core unit. The base clock speed, I believe on this, is a little bit lower than the Surface Go, but this does support turbo up to 2.4 gigahertz, which the Surface Go does not support. I don't know what that means, frankly. I'm not a tech geek. Well, maybe I'm a tech geek. I'm not a spec geek. Like, I don't know what these things mean. There are people out there that are much smarter than me that know what these things mean, but 2.4 gigahertz is higher than what the Surface Go can go up to. So does that mean that this 2-year-old device is faster than the Surface Go? Probably not, but well, we'll find out. This model has 4 gigabytes of RAM. I believe all of the Yoga books have 4 gigabytes of RAM. And then the only distinction that you can get is that there are 64 gig models and 128 gig models. And that's just like, you know, the SSD drive space. I did not opt to get the 128 gig model because the 64 gig model seems to be the older one. And this is the one that you can get for around $300. If you want the 128 gig, that seems like it's newer and it's not as steeply discounted in other places, so it's still going to cost you nearly $600. Dolby Audio Premium, Feel by Wacom. Oh, interesting. I know people had described this thing as coming with like a Wacom tablet, but I thought they were just using the name Wacom and the way that people would describe a tissue as Kleenex. But no, it's actually Wacom branded. This claims 13 hours of battery life, which frankly I'm not going to expect, but that is still even better than the Surface Go. It's got a Halo keyboard. This keyboard thing is going to be interesting. This is a thing that I think might have held this unit back in terms of gaining the popularity that things like the Surface have, but for me, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Anyway, let's go ahead and crack it open, see what we think. All right, so what do you get in the box of the Lenovo Yoga Book? You get a pretty decent little spread here, right? So of course you get the charging brick and you get a charging cable. Interestingly, this thing charges over micro USB. It's a couple years old. I guess that's probably why it's still micro USB and not like USB-C. You also get a pad of paper. This is for sure the only laptop I've ever bought that came with a pad of paper. And this is just because this Yoga Book has a pretty unique feature that frankly I'm kind of interested in, but I'm not really that interested in. But it's basically that you can take this pen, which it comes with, you can use one of these ink inserts, which again it comes with, and then you can draw directly on this paper with a real pen. And if you have it on top of the Yoga Book, the thing that you draw on this pen is actually going to show up on the screen as well. It's a feature that's, I think it's cool, but it's not really what I bought this for. What I really bought this for was to have a small 10-inch Windows laptop that could run those Windows softwares that I needed. Of course, you get instructions. They also give you a nice little microfiber towel for wiping down the screen, which is a nice touch. And they give you a little tool for ejecting like a micro SIM or a SIM card. And I think that's because you need that in order to eject the micro SD slot that's over here on the side. I'm gonna push this stuff to the side a little bit, give myself some room to open up the Yoga Book. Wow, this thing is really surprisingly, shockingly thin. I knew it was thin. I saw all the videos. I saw other people opening this thing up. I knew it'd be thin, but man, this thing feels super, super nice in the hands. Oh, that hinge is really nice and stiff. When it's folded up, this feels still really small. This feels like it's about the same size as a Surface without the key cover on top of it. But this has a keyboard built into it. Now, about that keyboard. So, you're probably looking at this, and if you're not familiar with this laptop, you're wondering where the heck is that keyboard? Well, the keyboard is right here. This is kind of the big compromise that the Yoga Book has, is that its keyboard, the keyboard that this thing uses, is like a touch-sensitive keyboard that lights up when the device is turned on. It's not like physical, tactile, clicky keys like you get on the Surface Go. And that's intentional, but it's a compromise, right? This is definitely not going to be as good of a typing device as the Surface. That said, I do think that this layout makes this better in some other ways. You can decide for yourself if it's better for you, but it makes this better in some ways. One, just because this whole device becomes super, super thin and lightweight. And then the other thing that's nice is that when you fold this around into tablet mode, let's say you wanted to do tablet mode, you don't actually have to worry about your fingers back here pressing keys by accident. That's one of the problems I have with all of these convertible laptops, is that you fold the screen back around, you fold the screen to the back, and then your hands are just kind of awkwardly touching keys. Well, with this one, you don't have to worry about it. And then the other big benefit that the Yoga Book gets from having this odd keyboard layout is that this giant pad right here is essentially a digitizer for this pen. Now, I'm not much of an artist. I don't think I'll be using this very much, frankly, but it's an interesting feature. It's a good way to make use of this compromise. So you get something that is this small, lightweight. It's got a compromised keyboard, but at least it's got its own unique features to it. So just real quickly, let's go ahead and compare it to the Surface Go. And you can see that the Lenovo is a little bit taller, right? But it appears to be a little bit narrower. In fact, it is. It's a little bit narrower. And then in terms of thickness, it is in fact thinner than the Surface Go. I'd say that the Lenovo Yoga Book is about the same thickness as the Surface without the type cover, right? Once you add the type cover, the Surface becomes definitely the thicker of the two. There's some other differences worth pointing out between these two is that, well, with the Surface Go, of course, you've got to buy the laptop, or you have to buy the type cover separately. And you also have to buy the pen separately. The Lenovo Yoga Book, it comes with the type cover built into it. I mean, the keyboard's built into it, and it comes with the pen. I guess it's kind of cool, right? Especially for the price that you can get this thing for right now. This is only $300. Now, I don't know if its performance is gonna be good enough, but it's only $300. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do, I'm gonna go ahead and set this thing up. I'm gonna start using it for a day or so, and then I'll come back and I'll let you know, how does the performance of the Yoga Book stack up against the Surface Go? The performance, it might be a little bit worse, but I think just for my expectations, right? This thing, my expectations for a $700 laptop were just a little bit higher than what this, actually they're quite a bit higher than what this thing can deliver. For $300, my expectations are lower. We'll see if this thing can at least hit those low expectations. All right, now, so I've spent a few days with the Lenovo Yoga Book, and I'm ready to let you know what do I think about this and what do I think about it compared to something like the Microsoft Surface Go. I'm going to start out with the ways that this is definitively worse than the Microsoft Surface Go, and it definitely is in a lot of ways. In terms of outright performance, yes, this thing is slower. This thing's 2 years older than the Surface Go. It's using an Atom processor. I don't know much about processors, but what I do know is that just kind of in day-to-day tasks, this thing is noticeably slower than the Surface Go, but it is also 2 years older than the Surface Go. In my Surface video, I complained a lot about the performance of Chrome specifically, and Chrome, yeah, it's pretty harsh on this thing as well. That said, I still prefer it to Microsoft Edge, even though Edge does perform better. There's just a lot of features that are in Chrome that you don't get, and just things that I'm used to, like things syncing up from one computer to another computer. I can't give up Chrome, folks. So yeah, the processor I think is probably slower than the Surface Go, but what's really slower is the graphics. You know, things like 4K video at 60 frames per second, you can get it to play in the Surface Go. It's not great, but you can get it to play. This thing, ooh, it really chugs with 4K video. Now, it's not a 4K screen, so you might be thinking, who cares, right? Why would you want a 4K video on a 1080p screen? The reason is that higher quality videos typically run at higher bit rates, and so even though I don't have the resolution for 4K, it would probably still be a better picture. Which brings me to another area where the Lenovo Yoga Book is not quite as good as the Surface Pro, and that's the screen. So the screen on this has actually got higher resolution than Surface Go, but it doesn't look as good. And frankly, I mean, that's the sort of thing that if you're seeing them side by side, it's gonna be pretty obvious that the Surface Go screen is much nicer. I think the speakers on the Surface Go are also better than these. These aren't bad, but they're just, I mean, these are what you would expect on this sort of device. I think the speakers on the Surface Go are actually better than I thought they would be. And then the last way is that the Yoga Book is worse than the Surface Go is in sort of the user interface, which sounds like a big deal. Okay, like the typing and the trackpad on the Surface Go, if you've got that type cover, really super good. The typing on this thing, ooh, is pretty rough. So the Lenovo Yoga Book has this interesting, they call it the Halo keyboard. It's basically, it's just like, it's a touchpad that lights up and turns into a keyboard without any physical button presses. And it's not great. Now, I am used to typing on touchscreens, right? I type on my Android, my Pixel phone all the time. I've been, you know, in the past, a really avid iPad user, and I can type really well on an iPad. I've typed frickin' essays on an iPad. This thing is rough. I think part of it is the sensitivity and maybe just like the touch tracking on this is not as good as you're gonna get on like a typical touchscreen device. But then the other part of it is just that on those devices like Android and iOS, the touch interfaces, they do a lot of really smart things with like predictive typing and noticing when you make a mistake and correcting for it. This doesn't have any of this, right? All the typing on this thing it's just as you type, you get exactly what you touched. If you touched the wrong key just kind of slightly, well, you're gonna get the wrong key. The other aspect of the typing that's not great on this is that there's no real good feedback that you've pressed a button. So out of the box, when you hit a key, this thing will do a little vibration and Windows will make a sound, like there's a typing sound. Two problems. All right, one, the sound. The sound happens like a good half second to a full second after you've pressed the key. So it's just garbage. Right out of the box, I had to turn that off. The vibration, it happens on time, but it's not like the greatest vibration. It just vibrates the whole thing. It doesn't feel like the taptic feedback that you would get on, let's say, iOS. So it's just not a great experience. It gets the job done. This is just not really a strong productivity device. And the same kind of goes for the trackpad. There is a trackpad on this thing that's underneath the keyboard. It's not a great trackpad. It gets the job done, but it's not nearly as good as a trackpad on the Surface Go type cover. All right, so I've just got done railing about how this thing's worse than the Surface Go. Why do I actually like it better? All right, for starters, the form factor in this thing is awesome. Yes, the sacrifice is the keyboard and the trackpad. Those are not great. If you need a device that you're gonna be typing up a lot of things on, okay, maybe this isn't the device for you. But if you are just looking for a system that runs Windows for, you know, a few programs that you need to run, and you want to use it as sort of an around the house casual web browser or media viewer, this thing, in my opinion, is way better than the Surface Go. So right off the bat, the form factor is fantastic. It is, when it's folded up, it's about the same size as the Surface Go without the keyboard. Once you add the keyboard and the Surface Go does get bigger. Although, like, frankly, like, size is not a reason that I don't like the Surface Go. The Surface Go size is pretty good. This just happens to be a little bit smaller. What really makes this better is the fact that the keyboard is part of the unit, right? You see that I'm holding it here in my hand and it's staying unfolded. This is not a thing that you could really do with the Surface Go because of the way that the keyboard attaches to the bottom of it. It's really floppy. You have the kickstand on the back of the system or on the back of the unit to hold it up steady on your lap or something like that. But the whole thing, the Surface Go, is really just not very good as a laptop. It's fine as like a tabletop laptop, but if you're sitting on the couch or in bed or something like that, it's just not the greatest form. This thing right here is much, much better. And I think the Yoga Book is actually also a better tablet. And you know, of course, the Surface Go, you can detach the keyboard and it becomes all tablet all the time. Windows is just not very good as a tablet interface, so I think you do kind of always have to have that keyboard around with you. This thing, you can fold it around backward like this, right? And now you have a tablet, just as tablet as a Surface Go, but the keyboard's still available if you need to fold it around. And then the thing that's really nice about this versus the Surface Go is, okay, yeah, the Surface Go, you can fold it around just like this, but now you have keys on the back of the unit that while you're holding it, you're accidentally pressing all these keys. They're smart, they disable the keys, they don't do anything, but it just makes it, yeah, in terms of like haptics and feelability but it just makes it in terms of haptics and feel, it just makes it really clumsy. And with this, the Lenovo Yoga Book, you don't have that problem. So yeah, I think the Lenovo Yoga Book is just a much better form factor for a portable. The Surface Go is a better form factor for like a desktop computer, but why would you get a 10-inch Windows computer as a desktop computer? You could do it if you want. I think this is better. And then lastly, the reason that this thing doesn't disappoint me the way that the Surface Go does is that this is much cheaper. Now, to be fair, this thing is 2 years old, so you can get it really cheap. I paid about 300 bucks for it right now versus like 700 bucks for the Surface Go with the keyboard. So it's basically half the price and it does everything that I need it to do. I think it's a better consumption device. It's cheaper. It comes with a keyboard. It also comes with a pen. Not that I'm going to use it that much, but it comes with a pen. And frankly, I just think in the end, for me, this is a better value. This does what I need. I like the Yoga Book. If I were to rate the Yoga Book out of 5 stars, I'd give it 3 stars out of 5. I don't think it's fantastic. Like I started this video with, it's got a bunch of flaws. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with like a new Yoga Book. Ooh, the Yoga Book 2. That could be pretty good. But as this sits, I think it's a pretty cool product. 3 stars out of 5. Only 300 bucks on Amazon. If you're interested in checking it out, I do have a link in the description down below. While you're down there, go ahead and hit the like button for this video if you liked the video, and then you can subscribe to the channel for more super reviews.